my name is Giana darling and I am a best-selling romance author. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to tell you about the books that define me as a romance reader. I'm going to do a part 2 if you're interested in books that define me as a romance writer, books that have like really inspired me and whatnot. But these are books that as a reader I feel like they tell the whole story about what I love to read in romance and why. So I have quite a stack here, so let's get going. First one will be of no surprise to you because I talk about her a lot and she's a dear friend, but she happens to write some of my favorite forbidden romance. And if you know me, if you've read my books, if you've talked to me, you know forbidden romance is my jam. So it's QB Tyler's The Nanny is Off Limits. I could have also put up Unconditional, which I've talked about before in my forbidden romance books vlog. But The Nanny is Off Limits is her latest release and I absolutely loved it. It's forbidden and saucy and fun and I just loved it. The kids are three-dimensional in this. I will say I don't always love having kids in my romances, like because I find that they can be kind of shallowly constructed, but each of the 3 kids in this is so good that I was begging QB to write a spinoff for each of the children. So that's how good they are, and when an author does it right, writing about children in a romance, I love it. I'm a sucker for it. It gets to my heart every single time. So love this. It's super spicy and it's super forbidden, which are 2 of the qualities in romance books that I'm always drawn towards. So no surprise here, The Nanny is Off Limits. Next I have 2 from the same author who I love. And it's interesting because I wouldn't say that this author, their writing style isn't what I probably would have assumed that I would be so drawn to. And yet they just released their latest book on May 2nd and I read it in 3 days and it was like 800 pages. So that just goes to show you how much I love this author. They write really slow burns and I will say typically not much action happens in the books. Although the first one I'm going to recommend by her that I think definitely defines my reading taste for a multiple amount of reasons is her latest release, which is The Things We Water. And I did order the special edition copy from her website because that's how much I'm in love with it. And I hadn't even read it yet. I just knew I was going to love it. I love all her books, but I would say The Things We Water, which is I guess it's a paranormal romance, but it's basically, I would almost say more magical realism because the world is so normal and there's just a super secret society of mythological folklore beings that live in current day world. And it was so good. Henry is the head of one of those secret societies in Colorado, and Nina is a heroine who has come into possession of a creature, a magical creature that looks like a dog, but he's now exhibiting signs that he is very much paranormal and she doesn't want to put him at risk in the real world, so she seeks sanctuary in this magical being sanctuary in Colorado, of which Henry is in charge. And basically there's an agreement that if she wants to join the community, she has to marry someone after her 3-month trial is up. So it's got like a lot of yummy tension. You know that she's gonna have to get married. She and Henry have a past because her best friend is Henry's cousin. So she's known Henry since she was a girl. He used to babysit her. So it's got that little forbidden age gap quality that, you know, I love in books. And I will say, like, Mariana Zapata, even though her writing isn't lyrical, which is usually what I really love, I find her stories absolutely riveting. The character development, the tension, the banter, the unresolved sexual tension because there's such slow burns, they're unparalleled, unmatched. I find myself giddy, kicking my feet, and I don't often find myself feeling that in romance novels, and Mariana Zapata always does that. So The Things We Water, definitely, especially for that little paranormal kick, because I do love paranormal romance, although this vlog mostly focuses on contemporary romance. But also these are the 2, I mean there's so many of my favorites. I'm gonna also say All Roads Lead Here is one of my favorites. This is a gorgeous special edition from Fairy Loot. I'm obsessed with it. And it is another slow burn. It's another age gap. He's a silver fox. And I feel like I don't get enough books where he's a silver fox because they're so yummy. And I need to write my own. I don't have one. Like I think the oldest hero I have is 40 and he's not silver haired. But I'm gonna rectify that in the future. Anyway, All Roads Lead Here is honestly a similar kind of setup to The Things That We Water, and I will say Mariana Zapata is so good at replicating the things that you love about her books again and again with different iterations. So it still feels fresh, at the same time it still feels comforting. All Roads Lead Here is about a woman who moves to Colorado as well, and she is doing so because her mother passed away and left a journal of all of the places that she went hiking. And so she wants to do the same hikes that her mother did. She ends up renting an apartment from a single dad, and she makes friends with his son who is really into music, and she just so happens to be really into music as well, and that's part of her career. She's a songwriter, and her best friend is a pop star, and she ends up really endearing herself to the son, which I think his name is Jonah. Anyway, she has been cheated on, so she like escapes to the wilderness basically to go on these hikes and kind of reconnect with her mom through that experience, and she falls in love with Rhodes. And so this is another thing where she's kind of like escaping her reality, trying to find something about herself or something safe, and she discovers her man. And this single dad was done so well. All of her heroes that I love, she does do golden retriever heroes, but the ones that I love are taciturn, and they're also huge. She loves a big man, which I also am a sucker for a big man. Give me like a 6'4" plus big burly man and I'm obsessed, and Mariana Zapata writes a ton of those. Rhodes is huge, Henry is huge in The Things We Water, and then the third one is The Wall of Winnipeg, and Aiden is also huge because he is a defensive lineman for a football team, and this one is she is his secretary and he wants to marry her to get a green card. But before that, she actually quits because she finds him so irascible, so grumpy, she can't handle it anymore, and then he seeks her out and asks her to come back and to marry him so he can get his green card because he's Canadian. Also love that because I'm Canadian. And what ensues is another slow burn of her realizing that he's actually a much kinder person than he seems. And that's another theme that she explores a lot in her books. I feel like with these grumpy heroes, they seem kind of like assholes, but then they're so sweet and gooey inside. For her, I love so many of her books. Like Luna and the Lie is another one that's really great. He's also like a silver fox, older age gap. I also love Wait For It, which is so good. She is the guardian of her brother's kids, and he coaches their little league baseball team, and he's their neighbor. There's just so many good Mariana Zapata books, but I feel like these ones especially really define my taste in romance. I'm obsessed with her. When she releases a new book, I know that all I'm gonna do is read her books. So definitely defines my taste in romance. Okay, another woman that defines my taste in romance, I think especially her earlier works, is Kristen Ashley. And I would say that Deacon is one of them, but this whole series, which is the Unfinished Heroes series, really defines my taste in romance. They're all anti-heroes. They're all gruff, kind of grumpy badasses. They're all bounty hunters, except for the first book, which is Night, which is one of my favorites, and I couldn't find it on my shelf, otherwise I probably would have pulled that one. And they're erotic. Some of Kristen Ashley's earlier books, they're kind of fade to black. These are not fade to black. I need some spice in my romance, you guys. Even with Mariana Zapata, there is a little bit of spice in her later books, which is great. But this one is so good. He is a mysterious, broody man. She has opened a resort in, again, what is with me in the Colorado mountains? I've never even been to the Colorado, well, I did a road trip through Colorado, but it's not like I have any affinity for them. Or so I thought, but I like a lot of books out there. So this is set in the Colorado mountains. She has opened like a resort, a cabin resort. She did with her boyfriend, and then her boyfriend, who's a lazy fool, leaves her, and she's running this by herself. He comes to the cabins and usually like grabs a key, grunts at her, and leaves the next day. But they develop this kind of rapport over time, and he ends up helping her with some of the fixes around the cabins, and they end up falling in love with each other. And he is a kind of outlaw bounty hunter, and he doesn't want to pull her into his dark worlds, but of course she's in love with him and he's in love with her. So I really love that. I also definitely have a thing for good girl, bad boy. That is like my kryptonite, and she definitely writes a lot of those. She does have a lot of cops in her romances as well, but I definitely prefer when she writes about the bad boy criminals because I love criminals. If you guys have read any of my books, you know that. Next up are a couple of the queer books that define my taste in romance. You guys know I'm obsessed with queer romances. I'm a queer person myself. I have 2 vlogs recommending my favorite romances, the popular ones and the not popular ones, and I have mentioned some of these on there, so I'm just gonna go over them really quickly. Riley Hart is an incredible romance writer, just absolutely stunning. I love all their books. Crossroads is always going to be one of my favorites. It's a double bisexual awakening with neighbors who both really thought they were straight until they developed this like beautiful connection and chemistry, and I just find that the sexual awakening is so poignant and so realistic. You can really tell, you know, they don't know what to do. You know, they're hooking up and they don't know how to hook up. They don't know the logistics. They don't know how to feel about it because it's so new to them, and they're in their 30s. And so to discover something about yourself like that that's so new is so vulnerable and so poignant. And I think that Riley does a really good job of exploring that in this book. It's still one of my favorite double bisexual awakenings, and double bisexual awakening specifically is one of my favorite tropes in romance. I'm obsessed with it, so this is a top tier for me. Along those lines, this is a sapphic romance that I absolutely love, Trisix Venom. There's a lot of really good sapphic romances out there. I find that it's harder to find ones with a bit of a darker edge, and this is kind of a bully sapphic romance a little bit. They're both at like a prep school. They both play field hockey. The tension between them, it's a long book, and I love a long book, but I just love that it has an edge, because a lot of the sapphic romances I read are quite fluffy and cute and more rom-com-y, which is fine, but I do love something with teeth. So I absolutely love this book, and I think it really defines specifically my taste in sapphic romance. Liza James also has some really good sapphic romance that I also highly recommend. And I chose this one because this was what kind of my first foray into it, and it stays with me forever. So good. And I just love Penn Douglas. I could have chosen quite a few of their books for this video. This one is not so much a traditional romance. It's actually like a literary fiction novel, and it was a New York Times bestseller, but it is forbidden, exactly how I like my forbidden romance, and that's All the Ugly and Wonderful Things. I also could pull up Fearless by Lauren Gilly, but I gave it to someone to borrow. Both of these books explore what it's like when, you know, some people really hate when a hero and a heroine meet when one of them is underage. Even when nothing romantic happens, obviously nothing romantic is happening when they're underage. They really hate it because it gives them the ick. I actually really love it because I think it shows how relationships can evolve and develop over time. In both Fearless and in All the Ugly and Wonderful Things, they start out as a protector for the heroine, really because their life is not, it's dangerous or it's not going well, and they show up as a guardian. And I really love that concept. And if you read Welcome to the Dark Side by me, you know I really love it because Zeus Scarrow is her guardian monster from a young age. He saves her in a parking lot shootout at the church. So I really love that dynamic, and both of these books have that really well, and it shows that they're exactly what they need at the time. It kind of, if we want to go to a Twilight reference, it's like when Jacob falls in love with Renesmee, or like he soul ties to Renesmee, and you know that he's not in love with her right now. He just wants to be there for her and help her and watch her grow. I mean, that's a little creepier because like he is in love with her a little bit at that time. Maybe we'll scratch that analogy. But all that to say, I just think that it shows that like love is not stagnant and that love can grow and evolve. And I think that both Bryn Greenwood and Lauren Gilly do such a great job of showing that evolution without it being icky, with it being really poignant and beautiful, and it really reaches into my heart and like pulls at my heartstrings. I don't know if it's because I have daddy issues, but I think that that specific dynamic in romance, like I could eat that up every single day. I just love it. So highly recommend these two for those dynamics. And I would say that's like a foundational trope or relationship that I look for in my romances. Another book that I have to recommend is because I love messy romance. If you've read some of my romances, you know they're messy. The Moon on His Tides, the Evolution of Sin trilogy, those are messy romances. People make mistakes, both the heroine and the hero. They're not cut and dry good people making always good decisions. They're flawed human beings just like you and me, and I love that in romance. And I think a lot of the time that gets glossed over because, you know, readers sometimes don't like a heroine who makes mistakes. They sometimes don't want to root for the hero who makes mistakes, and I love a messy romance. And Candy Steiner writes messy romance like no other. I could have chosen a lot of different books that she's written, like Make Me Hate You. There's a ton. But I have to choose A Love Letter to Whiskey because it's so iconic. It has a cult following, and it deserves to have a cult following because this is one of the messiest books that I've ever read. And I still remember exactly where I was reading this book. And it's that feeling of having my ribs cracked open and acid just poured into my chest, where you're like, oh, you're sick with anticipation and worry and longing, and you can feel everything that they feel. Do they have a toxic relationship? For some of this, yes. Does that make it relatable? In my opinion, yes. You know, they're in college. What good decisions did you make in college, really? And so I love the realism of this. I love the messiness of this. And this story makes you work for the HEA, which is also something that I love. You know, it's the opposite of a Mariana Zapata book. That's like a comfort read. This is like, I want to experience all the things. I want to feel alive. That's what this book makes you feel, and that's what I search for, I would say, most of the time in my romance. I want to feel like the world is against this couple. Maybe even the couple is against this couple, but in the end, they're going to earn that happily ever after, and no one earns it like these two. Also, I love this special edition of A Love Letter to Whiskey. It's so beautiful. Next up, and no surprise because I'm obsessed with it, is Wolf Song by TJ Klune. And this whole series is amazing, but specifically this one is just everything. Ox is our hero, and he meets a little boy in the woods one day. Oh my gosh, shocker, age gap again. And this little boy just takes like a fancy to him right away. He's like, oh my God, you smell so good. You're amazing. Where are you from? What's your name? And just is peppering him with questions, to the shock of his family, because this little boy has not spoken in like years. He was abducted as a boy, traumatized, and did not speak until he ran into Ox in the woods. And Ox, I really love this hero because he's so unique and iconic. He is not verbose, he's not eloquent, but he feels so deeply. He's raised by a single mom. He's felt kind of other his whole life, a little bit distant, and then he meets this little boy and his huge family, and they kind of take him in and really nurture him. It's a werewolf shifter romance. It's super sad, super emotional, super beautiful. I can't tell you how much this series means to me, and this book I can feel that ache in my heart as I'm talking about it. And if you love to feel that, you have to pick this up. The found family as well is another trope I'm obsessed with, and this found family is just so beautiful, and that's why I love shifter romances always, because of the pack. That found family mentality. Growing up as an only child to a single working mother, I always yearned for community, and that's why I love found family, and the shifter romances have them in spades, so highly recommend. Okay, something that I also really love in romance is BDSM. I love not just sexual awakening in terms of queerness, but sexual awakening in terms of kinkiness. You're discovering that you aren't as vanilla as you thought. You're discovering that you like to be submissive or dominant, or that you like X, Y, and Z in the bedroom. And I think that I like it so much because so many people are afraid to explore their sexuality in any kind of manner. And so when it's celebrated in romance, I find it really important and also really beautiful. And one of the original books, especially the series that I read that did this so well, was The Escalation of the Forbidden. This is book 2, Enthrall Her, but Enthrall is the first one. And I love this series. It is so good. Vanessa Fewings is such a great writer. And one of the reasons that I love it is I also have this specific love for when the heroine is with one person in book 1 in a continuing series, and she ends up with a different person in book 2 or book 3. I love, love, love that. That happens in ACOTAR, we know, with Tamlin and Rhys. But even before that, it happened in other books. And the first one I think I ever read in romance was this book series. She is with one guy, Richard, in the first book, and then in the second book, she's with Cameron. And their relationship develops from there into the other subsequent books. This is so good. She ends up in the BDSM scene for work. She's actually the assistant to 2 men who run a BDSM club. And kind of unbeknownst to her, she doesn't really get what it is that she's helping them with. And then she has this flirtation with one of the partners, Richard, and falls in love with him without really realizing like his sexuality and his kink. And sort of towards the end, she discovers that. But the problem is Richard doesn't want to train her. He loves her, but he's not good at training a new sub. And so he hands her off to his best friend who he trusts to train her because he's one of the best in the biz at training a new sub. So she then goes to Cameron to train to be the best sub possible for Richard. Over the course of that training, which, like, let's be real, why would you ever give someone to your best friend? That's just danger alert. But over the course of the training, there's obviously feelings involved. It's very messy emotionally. It's very sexy, very spicy, and like really wonderful to watch her be so vulnerable as she works her way through not only her sexuality, but also her feelings for these 2 very different men. Highly recommend. I never see this series recommended, and I love it so much, and it really did define kind of what I love in BDSM romance, and that specific thing of one guy in the first book and another in the subsequent books. Okay, I obviously always have to recommend Sierra Simone. American Queen is one of the first MMF romances that I ever read, which is a throuple where the 2 men and the woman all have sex with each other. Such a fabulous dynamic, my favorite dynamic. I remember a couple years ago, I read like every single MMF book that I could get my hands on. I actually ran through most of them. This was before the market was so saturated. Now there's a lot more that I could pick up and read, but this was one of the seminal ones in my education on MMF romance. Sierra Simone also is the kind of author that I read because I love their prose. Her prose is so good. I always say you can eat it with a spoon. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I have just absolutely, oh God, there's just so many good. I just flipped over into a sex scene. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's okay. You taste so good, Emery growled from between my legs. You gonna come for me now? Going to make me taste you as you do it? So her spice is top level, her prose is top level. The dynamic between these 3 is so good. This is a trilogy, and I also have to say that I am partial to trilogies or duets of continuing couples. I love interconnected standalones, but I do love spending a lot of time with a couple and really seeing them put through the ringer. Again, messy, emotional, earning that HEA. And so I really do love a trilogy and a duet. They're not as popular right now, but when I was, coming up in romance, that was the thing that people wrote. So I have a nostalgia kind of love for them. And this is one of my favorite trilogies of all time, the New Camelot series. So, so good. The next 2 are not typical romances, and they are queer. Both of them are MMM. Why do I keep saying that? MM romances. I don't even like MMM romances. But anyway, the first one is Call Me By Your Name, which is one of my favorite books of all time. A lot of these are literary fiction with heavy romance, and the reason why I think I'm so drawn to those is because, again, I really love the prose. I really love the emotional, complicated journey that the characters go on. I love that it can be messy because you don't necessarily even need an HEA in a literary fiction romance. And this does not really have a traditional HEA. It's kind of like left open-ended, but I love that, and I like that in my own writing. I always have an HEA, but I really like the emotional exploration, the messiness, and the beautiful writing. For me, I write because I love language and I love the human psyche. And literary fiction does such a good job of both of those things. This one isn't super sexy, but it does have a scene with a peach where he plays with himself with a peach, which is super iconic. And it's set in Italy, which if you guys have read any of my books, you know I love Italy. I have lots of Italian heroes. The Anti-Heroes and Love Duet is set in Italy. My Dark Fairy Tale is set in Italy. This is set in Italy, northern Italy, in kind of near Crema, and it's about a PhD student who goes to stay with his family in Italy and learn under and kind of work under a professor there. And the professor's son is Elio, and the man who comes to study with his father is Oliver. And Oliver and Elio have this kind of abrasive relationship at first. Oliver is older, Elio's kind of drawn to him but feels uncomfortable with it because up until this point has only been attracted to women, and they kind of rub each other the wrong way at first, and then they develop this really lovely rapport and relationship. And Oliver is kind of a closeted gay man, and this is set in the, I want to say the 70s. Yeah, in the 70s. So it's a different time. They're both Jewish and have different like viewpoints on that, have different viewpoints on what it means to be true to yourself, because Elio is French and Italian and Oliver is American, and it's just very different cultures. And just the way that these two come together, it's so beautiful. And the angst and the longing. This is single POV, so you only know Elio's point of view. I also love single POV. That's what Mariana Zapata does. A lot of the times Kristen Ashley has single POV, and I love that because it helps build the tension. I don't want to know what the other person is thinking a lot of the time, because it's just like real life. We don't know what the other person is thinking when we're going out with them, when we're falling in love with them. We just have to trust their words and actions, just like you have to do in a single POV romance. So highly recommend this. I love this book. Like, I could stitch it into my heart because it's so beautiful and I never want to be without it. Along a similar vein is The Song of Achilles, which is just a perfect book to me. Does it have an HEA? No, but it is so beautiful. It is about the myth of Achilles and Patroclus and about their relationship, which honestly is like an open secret. I don't even know if it's a secret, but often alluded to in classical renderings of Achilles' life and of the Trojan War. And this just does such a good job. Again, gorgeous prose. It starts when they're boys, when they first meet, and goes through their life up until the Trojan War and when Achilles makes the decision to go to war and not come back instead of just staying at home and being happy. So if you love the Iliad, if you love the movie Troy with Brad Pitt, you'll really love this because it's really fun. There's the gods, there's the warriors, all of the kind of characters that you would expect from the Trojan War, but it's really with this beautiful focus on the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles. And I sobbed my face off in this, and I love when a book can make me cry, and I love wearing those scars on my heart as little badges of honor. So this is so good, and I really think that that feeling again of an author who can reach inside my chest and manipulate my heart for good and for bad, that is what I love as a reader. That is what I strive for as a writer, and that's why I really love this book. So these are the books that define my taste in reading, also in writing probably, but I hope that you made some notes and I hope you pick up some of these books because they are so wonderful. Basically, to wrap it up, I love an age gap, I love forbidden, I love angsty, messy romances, I love really delicious, beautiful prose, and I really love it when the story takes an unexpected turn, like there being a different hero in book 2 than in book 1 and subsequent books. So if you like any of those things just as I do, make sure you pick up these books. And thanks for watching today, you guys. I hope you like, subscribe, and comment, and I will see you next week for more.